Happy to be back with another show of the Customer Experience Show. And today we have Nicolle Paradise, just like the place we will all end up if we're good boys and girls. And I'm so happy to have her on our show today. Nicolle, today, and if you're watching us, you will learn a lot of things about what makes a happy you, a more productive you. You will also learn about why emotions that turn into memories create great customer experiences, and the one piece of advice that Nicolle has heard in her career that has helped her tremendously. But a few more things about Nicolle just before she comes on the show. Nicolle Paradise is a decisive, data-driven SaaS executive with 15 years of experience in architecting, measuring, scaling, operationalizing, and transforming rapid growth organizations. Her expertise in client outcomes, customer success, and customer experience has delivered revenue growth to global startups and multi-billion-dollar organizations, yielding measurable value for clients, profitability for shareholders, and above all, inspiring employees. Nicolle is a board advisor and investor, the former head of audience experience at TEDx San Francisco, even though now she's a New Yorker, and she has traveled to all 7 continents. She finds Antarctica chilly and intends to be the first person to win a game of Uno from space. With this, let me welcome Nicolle Paradise to our Customer Experience Show. Nicolle, welcome to our show. Can you hear us, Nicolle? Nicolle, can you hear us? I think she cannot hear us. Melissa, Nicolle, can you hear us? She cannot hear us, I think. Let's wait a bit for Nicolle. Nicolle, can you hear us?
You hear me all right?
Yes, everything is great. Can you hear us? And welcome to the Customer Experience Show.
Oops, hang on one second.
Yes, take your time.
I think we're there. Sorry about that. I'll just blame it on some Manhattan traffic and some noise. We were having some audio issues here, even though we just prepped. So sorry, everyone. I am back.
It's good to have you here, Nicolle. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for making the time. I know you're very busy, and we won't take much of your time. And let me start with our first question. And just note that this is 25 to maximum 28-minute show. The first half of the show, we'll be asking you the questions, and then we're going to open it up for our audience. So my first question is the following. As an explorer of 7 continents, you aim to be the first person to win a game of Uno from space. What drives you to be so active?
Well, firstly, let me just say to everyone, thank you, Michael and Melissa and everyone for inviting me. And to everyone else, hello from the lovely city of New York City here in Manhattan. And thank you for the question. Your question around what makes me an adventurer. I think at first, like decades ago, I had this goal of being the person that goes to all 7 continents. And so I was young and I would set aside like $30 a paycheck and thought, okay, in a year I can get enough money to just go see stuff and have the money for a plane ticket or food or whatever. But the more places that I visited, the more I just started to realize, this sounds kind of silly, but it's true, that like this world of 7.8 billion people, it's really big. And the larger the world got to me, the smaller my ideas felt. And I had gotten a lot of things wrong about how people might think or feel, or how people might experience the world. And so I would say that whether it's a travel to Antarctica or throughout my own neighborhood here in New York, I think wherever any of us go, it should feel kind of unfamiliar and maybe a little scary, right? So what drives me is this understanding that, at least for me, I shouldn't speak for the audience, but for me, I most days now I understand how much I get wrong And that discomfort in travel that just happens when you're trying to go from place to place, I bring that to the business world, to my family. And what started as just this goal to see all 7 continents, it's yielded this awareness of how many times I every day conflate knowledge with assumptions. And so now I realize there's just so much more to learn and so much more to question. So that's what makes me an adventurer, and that's certainly some of what we'll talk about today is that lens of curiosity and questioning that hopefully we bring to business.
So the more you travel, the more ideas in your array of ideas. So that helps you also in customer experience. So you have approximately 15 years of customer experience. Can you define, like our previous guests have done, what is customer experience to you? Can you define customer experience for us, please, from your lens?
Yeah, I would say the key word is perception, and that sort of circles back to the travel side. What I perceived to be true through my own lens wasn't necessarily true for a culture I was visiting. And it's the same with our customers. I think of customer experience as that perceived value of a product or service. And I index to perceive because it's not about measuring happiness. It's not about delight. It's at the end of the day, our customers have a certain business need, and how they perceive our ability to deliver a product that gives value to that business need or fixes whatever problem that they didn't want to insource, but rather they thought to outsource, that perception is the cumulative way that customer experience is defined. And we can sit in all of our meetings and say, no, the deployment was supposed to be this, or that was supposed to happen, or maybe we've got unkind things to say about, our customers just not understanding it, not getting it. But the truth is, it is their perception. And I would say that the types of questions that most of us as companies ask our customers, they are questions that aren't actually asking about their perception or their experience of what they need in their business. They tend to be what we need, right? So just by a quick example, most of us on this call have probably heard or deployed an NPS survey or an effort survey. And so NPS is asking, hey, would you recommend me as a company? Our effort score is, what was your effort like in dealing with me, my company? How satisfied are you with me? We're not curious about what business problem they have today that they might not have had a year ago. And that is where their perception might change of our value that we're not aware of. And so that is where I think always remembering that perception is the definition will encourage us to be curious in ways that are actually about the customer and perhaps not just about the company.
So perception is reality, and our job is to find out what the customer's perception about us is, not how we feel about our service and our customer experience. We're building up for some examples because I know you have some great examples to share, but let's build it up a bit more before we get there. So the next question is the following: which is the determining factor for a great customer experience? Is it company environment, the culture, or is it the employee skills, the people who we hire? Or both?
I love that question. And may I say perhaps neither. It's a really good question because this is a really hot topic in our field, right? Like, do you focus on the customers? Do you focus on the employee experience? Do you just hire the right people? And I think it's less about the who or the what. My answer would perhaps invert the question, and my step one would be, okay, scrap that and ask, how does a company make decisions? Now, that can sound like a bit greenfield, but stick with me for a minute. We might be asking, what are the determining factors for customer experience? Meaning, how do I measure the employee happiness, the customer happiness? I would say to actually answer it, not hippy-dippy hypothetical, but like quantify how and what should be the most important, we start with how a company makes decisions. And here's why. I'm a believer that you're never, ever going to architect an optimal experience or an optimal product without this constant willingness to get it wrong. Again, like travel, you're going to have a perception of something, and then hopefully you'll be humble enough to be like, wow, I got that wrong, and I get a lot of things wrong every day. I think if all of us will just start with this really rudimentary question of how do we make decisions, then we begin to understand that the decisions will have a particular priority in mind. Here's where it gets a little rough. The truth is, companies will internally, especially senior management, they will choose, hey, right now we got to take care of employees. So that might mean less overtime, less customer service, less R&D into product. Or they might say, look, we've got to focus on getting revenue up. And so we're going to put more budget towards sales instead of customer support. I use these examples because while it sounds like you can just sort of peanut butter spread the answer, the truth is there are very difficult decisions that have to be made about the strategy of the company. And then those decisions, as hard as it is, we want to focus on the product or on top line growth or on profitability. They're nuanced levers, but they determine how your interns make decisions in a meeting in the same way that align to how your most senior leaders make decisions. And I challenge people to force rank if those decisions are ultimately, right now, today, going to benefit customers most? Are they going to benefit employees most? Or are they going to benefit shareholders most? And while that can sound tough, it's still true that you can deliver a great experience for shareholders, and that was your goal. You might have a crummy experience for employees, but I think those are the interesting levers that one can define to even decide who's your customer, and thus what customer are you actually solving for, the shareholders, the customers, or the retail buyer.
So you gave us the foundation. You talked about decisions, and the fish rots from the head, either positively or negatively. I'm going to skip a question and go to another question I had. You gave us the foundations, you gave us the theory, and because I know you have a lot of experience working for many companies, can you give us now the examples? Can you please tell us and share some examples of those companies or those individuals that have managed to create positive emotions and memories for customers? Let's see now companies that took decisions, the right decisions or the wrong decisions, if you like.
Yeah. So there are a couple examples, some concrete, some a little bit more vague. So let's start with the concrete. I think a lot of folks use Amazon. I'll pass on that because we all heard that a bunch of times. I would say one example that's relevant in the last 12, 15 months of COVID has been a company like Netflix. So while they started back in the late 90s, they have, while their natural curve of delivering experiences and creating emotions was about mailing DVDs back and forth, and they had a proper market cap even before. I think their market cap was like 220 some billion before COVID. What's been interesting is the type of decisions that they have made internally to acquire and or produce net new content in the last 15 months that has allowed nearly, 6 of 7 continents on the planet to have an experience that they needed, which was escape. It has been a brutal 15 months for everyone in different ways. And Netflix's ability to just recognize this sucks, and we need to deliver content that helps parents let their kids sit in front of the TV. And we need to deliver content that helps parents escape the things that are going on. Their ability to turn things around that would have taken 27, 28 months, to turn these things around through creative editing and marketing within a 4 to 6 month window, I think has been exceptional. And while some folks on this podcast might think, I don't know about serving up TV, I'd still say it was helpful for a whole lot of people. So I think a company as big as Netflix did a really great job. And then I would challenge folks to just think about their local grocery store. The local grocery store, wherever you and your family go shopping, they probably wanted to be at home when all of the stuff started melting down, right? And most of us had some bodega or some grocery store that stayed open so that you and your family would have the basic necessities or they were deemed essential workers. So I think whether it's the big company like Netflix or a small mom and pop individual like your local grocery store who stayed at work when we all needed to stay home, I think those are two different spectrums of folks in the last 6 to 15 months that have done really exceptional work to help probably all of us on this call.
That's great examples, two great examples of foresight and bravery. I have to say that Netflix had the word net inside its title, Netflix, before they were using the net. So there's foresight for you. And the local grocery store, which we have many examples around the globe. Nicolle, I saw you standing on a stage. You looked very charismatic, and you were. I heard your speech. I was mesmerized. And you said something on stage. You said that a happy you is a 20% more productive you. So what should companies do today in the post-COVID era, pandemic era, to make their workplace a more productive and, I dare say, a happier place, according to you?
One, thank you for watching from my stuff. Shameless plug, NicolleParadise.com, Nicolle with 2 L's. I got some videos there. Thank you for that, Michael. I will contradict my own keynote at this point. I think at the time, my beliefs or my understanding or my position would have been that if one is happier, as defined by a myriad of cohorts, then you will be more productive. Some of my views of productivity have changed during COVID, and maybe some folks on this podcast can empathize with that. The idea for me now of this question of what can folks do to be more productive has me envisioning that productivity is part of the process. So maybe we all started logging in and working 12-hour days, 15-hour days instead of 10-hour days because we wanted to be productive because we were at home and we weren't sure if, what that meant not being in the office. I'm now contradicting my previous stance on productivity, and I see it more as perhaps if we know what the defined output, the outcome is, the desired outcome, whether that is a specific project for our boss, whether that's for a client, whether that's at home, I would pivot myself less toward productivity and more toward what is the outcome. And I think about that productivity to me can be like busyness. And sometimes we're busy in the way that a moth is busy crashing about a lampshade, right? You're getting a ton of stuff done, but it's not producing any outcome. And so my advice to leaders and line managers that are struggling with productivity would be to maybe remove that word productivity and insert outcome. Okay, what is the outcome I want from this effort or my team? And then perhaps the tasks and the to-dos and the building blocks become a little less relevant, and everyone's galvanized around what is the thing we're actually trying to deliver. And that, especially in an exhausted COVID world, I think that helps people feel less like it's a hippy dippy, yay, I have purpose because we have a mission statement, and more like, okay, I get what it is that you want me to build or do because I know the outcome. And that having a purpose that's not just task oriented, but rather the outcome in mind, I think that really does lead to more employee engagement or happiness.
So move from productivity to outcomes, and happiness will explode. So, Nicolle, you have a lot of experience. I bet a lot of people have acted like mentors or mentees in your career. Can you share with us and help our B2B customers? We have a lot of followers and customers from B2B, business to business. What is the one piece of advice that has helped you in your customer experience career? Something that people might be able to follow and learn from?
Probably the best advice I've gotten, particularly to the well, I suppose to any business unit, but I would say specifically to the client-facing customer experience world, would be the following: asking oneself and a team, okay, how can I measure this before I message this? How can I measure this before I message this? And here's why. Everyone on this call has been in some conversation about whether customer experience is a cost center or revenue generating. And I think that friction, and some of us have been in these decisions where you're like, do I keep funding this initiative? Because I can't measure happiness and I can't measure delight. And so early on when I got advice that challenged me to measure something before I messaged it, it then challenged me to think, okay, I'm about to go into a meeting about, let's just say, the budget for your department, to talk about a 25% response rate for your NPS survey. I don't know if the CFO in the room is going to think that's really exciting, but to think, how can I measure this in terms of business value? Well, that sounds a bit calculated. It's still true. All businesses, nonprofit or otherwise, still have to make money. And so to measure whatever is the thing you want to communicate, whether it's your PowerPoint to an internal team, the so what, right? How can I measure this thing instead of just qualify it? Or out to a customer, not just, hey, how's it going? Just wanted to check in, but rather, hey, I was inside of your product and noticed that this X thing isn't being used. Thought I'd recommend if you use Y thing, based on your business, you probably have a 22% reduction, whatever. I mean, I'm fabricating that, but the spirit of the message is, I think a lot of us spend a lot of time talking about how tough it is to deliver value or communicate value. And if I may, I think it's just because, and I am guilty of this at times, sometimes I'm just lazy. And I think, you know what, I'm going to measure the thing that's always been measured because that's what became important. And I don't zoom out to say, what if I actually defined what I think needs to be measured and made that important and did the work to figure out how to measure it. Sometimes I don't, sometimes we're lazy. And I have found the most success in my career when I pick up a pen and a scratch piece of paper and start to figure out how the heck to measure something that can feel ethereal before I go message that ethereal thing. That has been, dare I say, game changing in having our businesses taken more seriously and having CFOs fund our initiatives, because we're talking about the business value it delivers. There's always something that can be measured before we message it.
Excellent. I love this. Measure it before we message it. So Nicolle, because we have some time limits, I'm going to take two questions from our audience. The first question comes from Savas Konstantinidis, and he is asking the following. Can you please tell us if you agree with this statement? What gets measured gets done.
That is a great question. That was not planted for anyone who is wondering. That is a fantastic question. I agree with it, and I also think it is incorrect. I agree that what gets measured gets done, because I have been at 2 multi-billion-dollar organizations, and I've been at 3 sub 100 million or 10 million startups. 100%. Whatever gets measured gets done. Doesn't mean it's right. So if I want to measure, here's an example. If I'm a software company and I believe that adoption is measured by how many times my clients log in, I'm going to measure that. I'm going to show green on my health status. And it's not going to occur to me that logging in is not usage. And if I don't make that connection, then I won't understand why I have such a high rate of churn. So yes, what gets measured gets done. I would challenge everyone to ask themselves, am I actually measuring what's most important, or am I measuring it because that's what has always been done? And maybe I should figure out a different thing to measure so I can go message that.
Excellent. Logging in is not usage. I love this. I love it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's usage. The second, and we have a lot of questions coming in, but we'll take only two to be exactly on time. We're very British here. So Nikos Kallikas is asking the following. Do you agree that companies should involve their employees in most of their decision making?
Oh, that is such a good question. I sound contrarian here, but it depends on the type of decision. So if it is the strategy of the company, I'll use a specific example. Some companies, I know every company says, we love our employees and our shareholders and stakeholders and customers. The truth is that's not true. Some decisions are, I'm a net new startup and all my investors care about is the very top line, growth. Anything else, who cares if we're not profitable? What Salesforce and Amazon went over a decade each without being profitable. Wall Street didn't give a darn, right? So to ask customer success or client services during that period of time, hey, are you okay with us losing 50% year over year of our customers? They're going to say, no, what are you, crazy? But the board or the executives are going to say, look, we're going for growth. We're not going for profitability. That example leads me to say that I think major strategy should be decided. Now, I think leaders should actually lead. So I think when you're in your one-on-ones with folks, the idea that it's just all tactical is not leading, that's managing. And I don't think that's nuanced. So can we crowdsource ideas by actually being curious, much like traveling? Can we actually be curious about the people that report to us and understand what are they experiencing and feeling? They know where the bodies are buried. What's happening on the ground? Can you then take that information to broaden your perspective and make strategic decisions for the company? Yes. Does that mean I have a 20-person or 20,000 person all hands and we vote as to whether we should cut budget in sales for top line growth or in retention and operations for below top line growth and retention? Do I think we should have a vote off on Slido in the middle of an all hands? I do not. So that is where the balance comes in of decision-making, the executive decision-making, while also being an actual leader and sourcing appropriate opinions and information inside of your one-on-ones.
Nicolle, excellent. Is there any final message to our fans and friends just before we recap and we'll let you continue your day? Any final message from Nicolle?
Well, firstly, also thank you for inviting me on here. I think my message for our group and also for the world more broadly is just in a world where we all can choose so many things, please just choose to give people the benefit of the doubt. It is a bizarre time right now, and it is easy to see the world through our own lens, that things are great or things suck, and this hyperbole is not helpful. So I think that as we go about our business and our meetings, let's just assume good intent, at least for today, because I think with all that's going on, maybe a little kind of full circle on the travel, maybe just all of us realizing that we conflate knowledge with assumptions. That will help us be kinder to the folks that we deal with at business and at home.
That's brilliant, and it's so true. It shows so much that you care and that you're empathic. In wrapping everything up, I would say, Nicolle, you have been immaculate. You have been very polite from the first day we got in touch with you. Mm-hmm. And I think customer experience starts with one-on-one behind the scenes. And I see the same Nicolle that I've seen behind the scenes today during our show. And as Nicolle told us, the larger the world got to her, the larger the world got her, the smaller her ideas. So Nicolle traveled as an adventurer to collect ideas, because as a friend of mine says, if I have €1 and you have €1 and we exchange it, we both end up having €1 each. But if I have one idea and you have one idea and we exchange it, we both end up having 2 ideas each. So Nicolle understood very well that it's all about ideas and about traveling and meeting new people, new personalities, new lenses that she can view the world from. Nicolle told us also that perception is reality. And if we want to have a greater customer experience, we have to understand, and we need to understand our customers' perception and not our perception. And before you message something, first and foremost, measure it, but make sure you're measuring the right thing, and get your CFO to come on board as well. Last but not least, I would like to say a huge thank you to Nicolle. She has been an inspiration, and I hope to have you soon back in our show. And thank you, Nicolle, for being present and so active.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for joining.
I would like to thank all of you, but especially my right-hand person, Melissa, who has been very instrumental. Thank you, Melissa. And to everyone who has joined today. And feel free to join us next Monday, where we come up with our weekly show, Jumpstart Monday. Thank you very much to everyone. And Nicolle, people are sending in their thanks. Roxani Konomou from Greece, from Athens, and many, many more. Thank you very much, Nicolle. Thank you to everyone. Bye-bye.
Excellent.